trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Vice Chair Murphy, would you read the motions adopted in camera, please?
Unfortunately, I can't do that, Mr. Chair. We didn't get to that portion.
Okay. And there was no information received?
Unfortunately, we spent excessive time on one agenda item and did not get to that. And we started late also.
So can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I would like to add something to the agenda.
Yes, sir.
I'm adding this item on behalf of our student trustee, Stephanie Mazza. I am adding it as an action item. I will read it. Whereas cutting down trees for paper is a detrimental action towards the environment since it has reached a critical stage due to the amount of carbon emissions in the atmosphere. Whereas the Halton District School Board recognizes the increasing presence of technology in the workplace and wants to ensure our students and staff are equipped to achieve throughout their entire life. Whereas our Catholic faith calls us to be stewards of the earth and do everything we can to protect our common home. Whereas going paperless would create a more accessible environment for students in the Halton Catholic District School Board. Whereas the Halton Catholic District School Board recognizes the importance of strategic planning for the future. Therefore, be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board devise a strategy to greatly reduce the paper usage in our schools, administrative buildings, and learning centers by 2024.
Thank you. I believe we need a second.
Just to be clear, you're moving that motion, Trustee O'Brien? Yes. Thank you.
And I'll be seconding. I'll be the seconder on it. I'll be the seconder.
And I'm adding it as an action item. Just so you know.
Yes. So I believe we need, to include as an action item, we need unanimous approval.
I have a point of order. I would like to know when, if it is adopted, which needs unanimous approval, at what point it would be put on the agenda. Seeing this is our last meeting and there are a lot of action items that we need to get through, if we do accept it, I propose that we put it as the last item to ensure that our action items are gone through.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order. It's the chair's prerogative where it goes on the list of the agenda.
I will follow, trustee Carabella's recommendation, because we do have a long item, to deal with. So it'll be added on the action items list, as a last item. And we'll work to get to it. Okay, thank you. So can I have a vote? It was moved by trustee O'Brien. It was, seconded by trustee Yantomasi. We need a unanimous vote. Can I have a vote around the table? All in favor? Motion carries. Okay? I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended, please. Trustee O'Brien? Trustee Duarte? All in favor? Motion carries. Declaration of conflict. Trustee O'Brien.
Action item 8.9 deals with budget estimates. Teacher salaries are part of the budget and budget estimates. My wife is a teacher with the board, so I will be declaring a conflict of interest on this item.
Thank you, trustee O'Brien. There are no presentations this evening, and I'm going to move to the approval of the minutes. Item 6.1, June 4th, 2019, regular board meeting. May I have a motion to approve? Trustee Duarte, seconded by trustee O'Brien. All in favor? Motion carries. Item 7.1, under business arising from previous meetings, summary of outstanding items from previous meetings. There are currently no items outstanding. Under item 8, action items, 8.1, clustered accelerated classes in the secondary schools. Trustee Carabella.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I thank you for this opportunity to ask the trustees' support for a motion. I'm not sure, do I move it and get a seconder right away, and then we can speak to it?
Can I have a motion? Well,
I'll move it.
I'll have to read the motion.
Yes.
Okay? So it is resolved that senior staff examine the feasibility of clustered classes and/or accelerated learning opportunities in secondary schools that currently have the Advanced Placement AP program and prepare a staff report to the board in September 2019. So, may I have a mover?
I move it.
Trustee Carabella, seconder. Trustee Antomasi. Discussion.
Usually I can speak to the motion. I can start the
Go ahead.
discussion. Thank you. So I take this opportunity to thank the trustees for considering this motion. I'm asking for your support. I'm asking the staff to examine in pros and cons of the idea of putting clustered classes and accelerated learning opportunities in secondary school from all the discussions we've had and other information that's being brought forward about gifted students. It's just a positive, a different approach to see the needs of the students, just to see what it would be to have pros and cons to study the feasibility of actually putting in these classes and seeing the revenues as well. We've been talking a lot about costs, but it could be there's revenues that would come by students that are retained, by attracting other students from other boards, and there's teacher training that's involved, really just to get an idea of what it would look like for these two classes. I think it would be it would be positive for our school board, that it would raise the profile, that we're increasing the profile of Halton Catholic by offering diverse programming. And so I ask for your support. It is just merely a staff report on that, which when we get the information back, it's another opportunity for discussion, but it's just that we would actually have some idea of what this would involve.
Any questions? Trustees, I don't know. Any other comments? So we can take it to a vote. All in favor? Going to record the vote. Trustee Murphy.
In favor?
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Trustee Antomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Mazza.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien.
Favor.
Trustee Herrera.
In favor.
Trustee Duarte.
In favor.
Trustee Zarnota. Trustee Charlebois.
In favor.
Trustee Guzzo.
In favor.
Motion carries. Policy I-30, video surveillance, Nancy Guzzo. Could you please read the motion?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, following the policy meeting last Tuesday, be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that Policy I-30, video surveillance, be approved as amended.
May I have a seconder? Mr. Antomasi. Discussion? All in favor? Recorded vote. Mr. Murphy?
In favor?
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Antomasi?
In favor.
Trustee Mazza? Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
Trustee Herrero?
In favor.
Trustee Duarte?
In favor.
Trustee Zarnota? Trustee Charlebois?
In favor.
Motion carries.
In favor.
You moved it. You moved it. Hey? All right. You weren't gonna vote no? Item 8.3, Policy 2-45, Equity and Inclusive Education. Ms. Guzzo.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that Policy II-45, Equity and Inclusive Education, be approved as amended.
May I have a seconder? Trustee Zarnota, discussion. No discussion, so registered vote. Trustee Murphy.
In favor?
Trustee Carabella.
Opposed.
Trustee Antomasi.
Opposed.
Trustee Mazza.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien.
Opposed.
Trustee Herrero.
In favor.
Trustee Duarte.
Opposed.
Trustee Zarnota.
In favor.
Trustee Charlebois. Trustee Guzzo.
In favor.
I think we have a tie here. I vote in favor.
Point of order, so it's the tie now that you voted in favor. It's 4-4.
Yes, so I exercise my right to vote.
Okay.
Okay? So the motion fails as a result of that. So the motion fails. Good clarification. Thank you, Trustee O'Brien. Okay? So motion fails. Item 8.4, Policy II-51, Operational French Programming, Early French Immersion, and Extended French. Trustee Guzzo.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that Policy II-51, Optional French Programming, Early French Immersion and Extended French, be approved at first reading.
Discussion. Trustee Carabella. We need a seconder, I'm sorry. Trustee Carabella. Discussion. Trustee O'Brien.
I'd like to make an amendment to this policy.
Okay.
I'd like to direct the trustee's attention to page 404 or page 42 of the package under the title of Withdrawal from Program. I'll give you a second to get there. Page 404 on eScribe. On the package, it's page 42, Withdrawal from Program. Under Withdrawal from Program, it reads, where the needs of a student may be best served by withdrawal from the program, such withdrawal may take place after following the implementation of reasonable intervention strategies by school staff. I move that after the word staff, there be inserted the phrase in brackets, example, the development of an individual education plan with program accommodation and modifications by the classroom teacher and or CERT. I can read that again if you like.
So we're making a motion to amend the motions, right?
Yes.
Correct? Would you mind rereading that?
Okay, so under the title Withdrawal from Program, it says, where the needs of the student may be best served by withdrawal from the program, such withdrawal may take place after following the implementation of reasonable intervention strategies by school staff. Can everybody see that? After the word staff, I move that there be inserted the phrase, in brackets, example, the development of an individual education plan with program accommodations and modifications by the classroom teacher and or CERT, end of bracket. Yes. Under the title Withdrawal from Program, it reads, where the needs of a student may be best served by withdrawal from the program, such withdrawal may take place after following the implementation of reasonable intervention strategies by school staff. I move that after that be inserted in brackets, example, the development of an individual education plan with program accommodations and modifications by the classroom teacher and or CERT. I'm moving that be inserted after the word staff.
May I have a seconder for that? Trustee Carabella. Can we have a discussion on it?
Okay, I moved it, so I'll speak first.
You moved that, there's a seconder, now we're gonna have a discussion on it.
The mover gets first.
Hmm?
The mover of the motion gets first. Yes, look at our bylaws. It's true.
I'm sorry, Trustee O'Brien, just for clarity, this is an amendment to the motion that we're trying to deal with, right? No, is it or is it not from your perspective? It is, right? So we have a mover, you moved that amendment. Trustee Carabella seconded it. Now we're open to discussion. Trustee Guzzo.
Trustee O'Brien, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Trustee O'Brien, I'm a little concerned about you adding in the development of an IEP program for children. This isn't something that just happens because a teacher decides that they're not suitable. An IEP is something that is governed once a psych ed is done on a student. It's not something, unless you're suggesting that we do IEPs on non-identified children. Are you suggesting that? I think I just need to understand, because I think the teachers at this point would be looking at making sure that all possibilities were exhausted. That's the whole point of after following invitation of reasonable intervention strategies. I think that falls under that. So I think I just need to understand, are you suggesting that we IEP a student just because they're not succeeding in French?
Okay, I'll speak to that.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, in our board there are IEPs, but there are also something called an informal IEP. Also, as well, I'm taking this right from the Halton, Hamilton Catholic School Board, who's had this in their policy for years. I feel that if a board like that that's had French immersion already in their system for such a long time, we can learn from them. So if they have that stated in their policy as it is, I feel we're just capitalizing upon their wisdom. So I'm not saying that we have a formal IEP for every student that wants to get out, but there is something called an informal IEP, and that's what I am proposing as an example, not a mandatory thing. Remember, I used the word example before, at the beginning of the brackets. Also, I'll speak as well as this, I did speak to one of our parents in our system that does have a child in French immersion, and they did experience a problem with the first sign of the child having difficulty in the program. They were encouraged to have the child removed from the program. I feel a statement like this would safeguard against those kind of suggestions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to make light of the situation, but it almost seems like it's a bit of the mafia. It's easy to get into, tough to get out of. If you want to get out of the French program, if it's not the right decision for you, then really it should be a discussion between the parents and the teachers. I think we're adding layers of bureaucracy and making it more difficult. So I would like to get some feedback from some of our superintendents as to the impact of that decision.
Superintendent Cipriano.
Sure, through you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things. As a former principal at two elementary schools with French immersion, now superintendent of special education, ultimately the decision to remain in a French immersion program is a parent's decision to make. So it's not a principal's to make, not a teacher's to make. A parent has final say on whether their child remains in any French program or goes back into an English program. I can assure you, again, from my own experiences and just from the many experiences of all of our schools with French programming, that what Trustee O'Brien is recommending does take place. The notion that a family working with the parents to go through a list of supports, accommodations possibly, extra help, that does take place. And because they do take the decision ultimately very seriously, and it is an important decision that parents will make ultimately, not principals.
Observation through you, Mr. Chair. So I don't think that we can impose a cert. That's something that's operational because it does require staffing, and that should be left for senior staff to decide.
Thank you. Any other comments? Trustee O'Brien.
I want to respond to what Trustee Adamasi said. I did not use the word impose, I used the word example.
Okay.
I withdraw my statement. Thanks.
Are we ready to vote on the amendment? Trustee Murphy?
Opposed?
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Antomasi?
In favor.
Trustee Massa?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor?
Trustee Herrero?
In favor.
Trustee Duarte?
Opposed.
Trustee Zanota? Trustee Charlebois?
Opposed.
Trustee Guzzo?
Opposed.
Motion fails. Motion fails, 4-3. The amendment fails. Okay? So that means we take it back to the original motion. Trustee Carabella.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just had a housekeeping point, and then I did have an amendment to add as well. The housekeeping point is in paragraph on page 3 of 4, the 1.5. It refers to the Director of Education as per Section 3, but I think it's to be Section 2, because it refers in Section 2 about his discretion and responsibility. And
So is that a typo we're talking about?
it's like a typo.
Can we resolve to just get it corrected, or do we have to go through the process? Okay?
And then
So taking us back to the original, yes, Trustee.
I had an
Carabella.
amendment as well.
You did
That
have
was
an amendment.
that
Okay,
was-
I thought that was the amendment.
Okay, no.
Go ahead.
So I had a lot of time to read and go through this again, so I know we've had some good discussions at our policy meeting. And I wanted to bring your attention to this paragraph, this 1.5. When optional French programs are being, so they're talking about relocated, phased in, phased out, split multiple locations, expanded into new locations, the following shall apply. And the first those 3 paragraphs deal with all those issues that are left. They deal with relocating and phasing in and expanding. The only part they don't deal with is actually phasing out completely a early French immersion or extended French program from Halton Catholic. So not just not relocating it, but completely deciding Halton Catholic will no longer have early French immersion and then phasing it out, or Halton Catholic will no longer have extended French and phasing it out. So I'm proposing an amendment to address that particular situation, and it's not without precedent. It has happened a few years back, 2016, that it came to a vote for the trustees about completely phasing out early French immersion. So I think that it's just a part we missed out on, so this is what I was proposing to amend.
So do you have that,
I have.
the wording of the amendment?
I do. So it would be not changing anything that's there, but adding another paragraph, 1.5.4, which would say, when deciding to phase out an optional French program from the Halton Catholic District School Board, either the early French immersion or extended French, a report will be brought to the Board of Trustees for review and a final vote for approval.
May I have a seconder? Trustee Antomasi. Discussion. Trustee Guzzo.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So what we're saying is 1.5.1, if we relocate or phase in, the decision is made by the director.
Mhm.
If we introduce or phase in a new optional, the discretion is made by the director. When a portion or an entire optional French and its existing is supposed to be located, the final school boundary review accommodation plans to be, it's done through the school boundary process, which it is. So now we're talking about phasing out an optional program. So we're asking that it be brought here with a staff report in advance.
Yeah. Yes.
Trustee Zanonota.
You had noted past precedents about, that it happened before about phasing out the French program. It was my understanding, and I may be completely wrong, that that program was a pilot program at the time. It wasn't an ongoing running optional program. Is that correct?
True. It was a pilot. It was in a pilot program. It was in its 4th year, and it was brought to the board to phase out. So,
Trustee Zanonota.
And I'm saying this in the trueness of my heart. So, this is very, again, getting into the operational side of the board, in my opinion. So, if it comes to us for a vote and they say we need to phase out this program, what are we going to do as trustees to change that, is my question.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Trustee Carabella, go ahead. Answer the question.
okay. Now I've got confused. What is your question again?
Is if we vote this in, adding this into the verbiage, and they come to us at some point and say, we need to phase out early French immersion, and we say no. That is an operational decision. I don't know how we as trustees, and Trustee Antomasi is shaking his head, but let me finish my thought. How are we going to change that operationally? I'm asking the question.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So
Yes,
trustees,
Trustee Antomasi, please.
Thank you. I'm happy to answer that. I really believe I've been trying to explain to the trustees that programming is important for us. It's part of our purview. It's part of our decision making. It says right on the website, delivering effective and appropriate education programs to its pupils. many things come to us for approval, and it might be that they propose it and we agree, but it should come to us. There's a history with the early French immersion for 2016, where, and hence the reason for this policy that gives due notification. I don't know if I want to get into the history of it here, but parents didn't know about it till it was at the board table for a vote. So it was postponed to receive delegations, then it was postponed for a year, and came to the trustees for a vote. And it was turned at that point into a permanent program, and it's thriving because that's where the interest is. We've seen the wait lists now. It's where the demand is, and it's been going very well. I have not received myself a phone call from anyone saying, I'm very upset with my child in this program and it's not a good program. I think we have to be, we've seen things out of policies go into procedures, and I think we have to be careful about what we keep in policy and keep in procedures, and some things we have the right to vote and represent our taxpayers too, right? Or the ratepayers.
Trustee Guzzo? Trustee Murphy?
I'm always the ugly stepchild. Through you, Mr. Chair. I would like to get an understanding from Superintendent Percassin under what conditions would you expect to make a decision for an optional program like this to be canceled?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I think that for us it would come down to a lack of interest in the program, which there isn't at the current time. We talked about staffing challenges and various other things over time. And so right now, at this point in time, I can't imagine not discussing it with the Board of Trustees at some point, as we did 2 years ago, and moved forward with some research investigation, along with having parents on a team of, that ended up having the same recommendation that the original group did. So insofar as optional French programming goes, it's about interest and having student interest and having staffing available to provide quality programming to our students. That's really what it's based on, and it would not be a curriculum superintendent decision or recommendation. It would be something that would be vetted through senior administration after due research and time.
Yes, go ahead.
So a follow-up to that. So if the conditions were such that there was an interest and there was a recommendation to dissolve the program, but the board didn't have that inclination, what would the hardships be created by making a decision against the recommendation to dissolve the policy?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think that it would be hard to project what the conditions would be for us to be proposing that we not maintain our optional French programs. Originally, they came from the whole perspective that we were not able to accommodate everyone who was interested because of staffing, because of space in some regard. And so that was the recommendation about the longevity of the program, the sustainability of the program, and from a staffing perspective, being able to provide the quality programming with a level of French delivery that we would be looking for in the French immersion. So we have found a way to maintain that. We now have teachers in school for 2 years, so it's longer. So every 2 years we do have a group of graduates, and so it's easier to staff at the beginning of the year. The challenges are throughout the school year when we have various medical leaves or maternity leaves. That is when it's difficult to staff. So while perhaps parents have not shared their displeasure with staffing with trustees, they certainly have with administration, and various gaps in time when they do not have qualified French teachers in the classroom. So that has been expressed to us on many occasions, and distress from parents when we have not had a French teacher, in one case a qualified French teacher, for up to 3 to 4 months.
Are we ready to vote? Trustee Guzzo?
sorry, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I have to mirror the sentiments of, trustee Chernota. To me, programming isn't a trustee, purview for us to decide where programming is developed and whatnot. So I have a concern with if we decide whether or not the viability of a program can be decided here at this table without, it always comes back as an information item anyways. It's always provided by staff. If we have questions, we can always raise it. So I don't think that putting it in here is necessarily warranted when that's already something that's in practice.
Trustee O'Brien.
In response to what Trustee Guzzo is saying, I'm looking at Trustee Guzzo, what it says in the Education Act, where it says the role of the trustee is to deliver effective and appropriate education programs to the students. I wonder if it really is our responsibility, and maybe we've just been not seeing that. That's what I'm feeling.
Are we ready to take a vote? One more comment?
And with all due respect, delivering a program doesn't mean that we deliver the program, it just means that we're governing over our staff and our director to develop those programs, not us, ourselves.
Trustee Charlebois, go ahead.
Perhaps, so this is just a question for Superintendent. So, have we seen any negative impacts of the trustees' motion to halt the moving of the French program at, name is escaping me right now, St. Matthews? So, because the trustees did step in earlier this year and we did halt it. Have we seen any, negative impact from that decision?
Can I take that one? I'm not sure that's the same situation that we're talking about here, Trustee Charlebois. I assume that Trustee Carabell is talking about eliminating a program completely from the board, not moving it from a location to another location, but completely taking out.
That's correct. So imagine Halton Catholic not having an early French immersion program and all those students going to the public board, or having no extended French. So it would mean like that none of our schools would have extended French. So it's a big decision to completely take out that program, and I think should rest on us for final approval.
So, we are dealing with the amendment to the motion currently, okay? There are no other questions. We're going to take it to a registered vote. Trustee Murphy.
Opposed?
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Trustee Yantomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Massa.
Opposed.
Trustee O'Brien.
In favor.
Trustee Herrero.
Opposed.
Trustee Duarte.
In favor.
Trustee Zarnotta. Trustee Charlebois.
Opposed.
Trustee Guzzo.
Opposed.
So we have, wow, things are close tonight. In favor. So the motion carries. So the amendment carries. If I don't vote.
The amendment, we just voted on the amendment.
Read the amendment again, please.
The amendment is, it would be 1.54, when deciding to phase out. When deciding to phase out an optional French program from the Halton Catholic District School Board, either the early French immersion or extended French, a report will be brought to the Board of Trustees for review and a final vote for approval.
I'm opposed. Okay, the amendment fails. So, back now to the original motion. Would you mind rereading the original motion?
apologize, I lost my spot. Thank you. Be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that Policy II-51, Optional French Programming, Early French Immersion and Extended French, be approved at the first reading.
May I have a seconder for that? Trustee Duarte. Any discussions? No discussions. Should we have, let's take it to a vote. Trustee Murphy.
In favor?
Trustee Carabello.
In favor.
Trustee Antomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Mazza.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien.
In favor.
Trustee Herrero.
In favor.
Trustee Duarte.
In favor.
Trustee Zarnota. Trustee Charlebois.
In favor.
And Trustee Guzzo.
In favor.
Motion carries. Moving on to item 8.5, Policy II-52, Student Use of Service Animals in Schools. Trustee Guzzo.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that Policy II-52, Student Use of Service Animals in Schools, be approved at first reading.
May I have motion, seconder on the motion? Trustee Duarte. Any discussions, please? No discussions? Registered vote, Trustee Murphy.
In favor?
Trustee Carabello.
In favor.
Trustee Antomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Mazza.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien.
In favor.
Trustee Herrero.
In favor.
Trustee Duarte.
In favor.
Trustee Zarnota. Trustee Charlebois.
In favor.
And Trustee Guzzo.
In favor.
Motion carries. Item 8.6, 5-1, Use of School Grounds and Community Use of Schools. Trustee Guzzo. Please read the motion.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that Policy V-01, Use of School Grounds and Community Use of School Facilities, be approved as amended.
May I have a seconder, please? Trustee Zarnota. Any discussions, questions? No discussions. We'll take it to a registered vote. Trustee Murphy.
In favor?
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Trustee Yantomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Mazza.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien.
In favor.
Trustee Herrero.
In favor.
Trustee Duarte.
In favor.
Trustee Zarnota. Trustee Charlebois.
In favor.
Trustee Guzzo.
In favor.
Motion carries. 8.7, Policy 5-18, Community Engagement and Public Consultation. Trustee Guzzo, would you please read the motion?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that Policy V-18, Community Engagement and Public Consultation, be approved at second and third reading.
Discussion. Oh, seconder. I'm in a little bit of a hurry, I'm sorry. Trustee Murphy. Any discussions? No discussions. Registered vote, Trustee Murphy.
In favor?
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Trustee Antomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Mazza.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien.
In favor.
Trustee Herrero.
In favor.
Trustee Duarte.
In favor.
Trustee Zarnota. Trustee Charlebois.
In favor.
Trustee Guzzo.
In favor.
Motion carries. Moving on to item 8.8, 2019 Capital Priorities List Submissions. Superintendent Lofts. Would you read the motion?
Certainly.
Or, yeah,
Yep,
okay, go ahead and read the motion.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll read the motion of the action report. Be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the proposed ranking of the 2019 Capital Priorities Business Case Submission as follows. So I'll read the rankings. Ranking number 1, Milton number 3, Catholic Secondary School. Ranking number 2, Milton number 10, Coben Catholic Elementary School with Child Care Hub Early On Center. Ranking number 3, North Oakville Catholic Elementary number 4 or Catholic Elementary number 5, Catholic Elementary School. Ranking number 4, Vision Georgetown Catholic Elementary Secondary School, Catholic Elementary School with Child Care Hub Early On Center. Ranking number 5, Holy Cross Catholic Elementary School Rebuild with Child Care Hub Early On Center. And ranking number 6, St. Dominic's Catholic Elementary School Partial Rebuild. Resolved that the board authorize staff to submit the board's 2019 Capital Priorities Business Case submission to the Ministry of Education for funding consideration as outlined in the relevant ministry memorandums. Resolved that the board authorize staff to make necessary minor modifications to the rankings and project scope whereby the contents and details of the memorandum would necessitate changes to the proposed 2019 Capital Priorities project list.
May I have a mover? Trustee Murphy. A seconder, Trustee Antomazzi. Discussion? No questions? Take it, Trustee Murphy.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Fred, what would a minor, can you give us an example of what your expectation of a minor modification would be?
Through Mr. Chair, some examples that we could anticipate are some of the parameters that are within the guidelines of the business memorandum that has yet to be received. So examples would be if there weren't any child cares that were being proposed, then we would remove the child care component and would prevent ourselves from submitting. So if they're not entertaining those kinds of proposals, then we would adjust it. If it's an adjustment based on they're just looking for certain projects for a certain timeline, like no projects past 2020, for instance, then again, that would adjust the ranking order where we would prioritize projects that are coming in sooner. It could be things like they're not accepting renewal projects or things like that. So unfortunately, we're in a situation right now where we don't have the memorandum to really guide some of these parameters as of yet. We were hoping that similar to the previous time, we would have received it around this time and informed you of those and adjusted it accordingly, but that isn't the case. So again, those would be some examples of the minor modifications that we'd be looking at, and in the event there is any kind of major modification, then we can certainly let you all know and see how we proceed accordingly. So.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll take it to a vote. Mr. Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee Carabello?
In favor.
Trustee Yantomasi?
In favor.
Trustee Mazza?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
Trustee Herrero?
In favor.
Trustee Duarte?
In favor.
Trustee Zarnota? Trustee Charlebois?
In favor.
And Trustee Guzzo?
In favor.
Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is 2019-20 budget estimates, final, Superintendent Lofts. Would you please read the motion?
Be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the 2019-20 budget estimates in the amount of $428,303. Let me read that again. $428,758,303.
It's just a few zeros.
Yeah.
May I have a mover for that, please? Trustee Murphy, seconder. Trustee Duarte. Discussion. No discussion. So I will carry it to a vote. Trustee Carabello.
We're on the budgets, 8.9. I did have a question. So reading through, so it says that we are in an operating deficit, right? And then it says here, there was an explanation added on that we need to have the minister approve a deficit. And then in the same information, you say that it's gone to the ministry, that the ministry has been informed about our current deficit position, but have we received an approval for it? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I actually contacted directly our department responsible for these approvals, and I'll read back the response that I received. If your board's deficit is within the 1% of your operating allocation for compliance, you just need to send in the template, which we received a template, and your board's plan and how to eliminate the deficit within 2 years. Your board would only require ministerial approval if the deficit exceeds 1% of your board's operating allocation for compliance purposes, or if you are noting that you are unable to eliminate the deficit within 2 years. And this was received on June 14th.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Trustee Yantomasi.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So do we have a recovery plan that we're submitting along with our budget, with our deficit budget?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do, Trustee Yantomasi.
Can you share it with us now?
Certainly. It's kind of related we're anticipating that we're going to be receiving $570,000 in extra money, which would eliminate our operating deficit.
Any other questions? Trustee Carabello.
So on the page, I think this is what you're talking about. If as expected, these expenses are funded by the PPF grant, then Halton Catholic District School Board is projecting an operating surplus. And when do you think we would find out?
I wish we would have found out by now, but we haven't yet. We've received information that we're receiving an allocation. That's what provincially we've received. Every board in the province has received that notification. We just haven't received what our actual allocation will be. And that's what we're waiting on, is still from the ministry to receive that actual allocation of what our PPF or our priorities and partnership funds are going to be.
Point of order, through you, Mr. Chair. So as trustees, we're bound by the fact that we can only pass balanced budgets. This is a deficit budget, and for that reason, I'm putting you on notice. I'm voting against it.
What was the point of order, Trustee Ant?
We have changed the parameters by which we're working. We have a deficit budget, but we as trustees, under the Act, cannot pass it.
Maybe that may be a matter of interpretation and definition.
The preamble of the Education Act states trustees can only pass, and I quote this, a balanced budget. It stops there. The 1% he's referring to is only subject to approval from the ministry. We do not have approval from the ministry. We do not have a recovery plan in front of us for us to approve.
Would you like to respond to that?
Certainly. To you, Mr. Chair, I've actually included in part of the report a quotation from the Education Act. And it's actually, boards shall not adopt estimates, and you are correct, Trustee Yantomasi, that it says, boards at the beginning of the year and each fiscal year in time to comply with the set date shall prepare and adopt expenses for the fiscal year. But if you look at the exception that's further down, item number 4, just let me get my glasses because it's flaring up here a little bit. Despite subsection 3, a board may adopt estimates for a fiscal year that indicate the board would have an in-year deficit for the fiscal year if a regulation is made under subsection 231, bracket 2, and the estimated in-year deficit would be equal to or less than the maximum amount determined in accordance with that regulation. And then I say no. Currently, the lesser of 1% of the operating allocation, or $3.7 million for 2019 estimates, or prior year cumulative surplus for compliance of almost $9 million of the 2018-19 revised estimate.
So I'll repeat myself. The preamble of the Education Act states that trustees, the Board of Trustees, can only pass balanced budget. The exceptions and the exclusions you're referring to have to be adopted by the ministry via permission to the board stating that they accept, in which case we don't have to vote on it, the Board of Trustees, that is. And it's no longer in our hands.
Trustee Guzzo.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Again, I'm reading the Act and it has to be read as a whole. It's not read as individual lines. You have to look at it with the exceptions and all the subsections. And I think it's pretty clear, and it still says that we have to pass it. So I I believe Superintendent Lofts has presented that not only has he fallen under, that we're under the 1%, but he's also sought additional clarification through the ministry and actually notified them, which I think he's actually gone above and beyond what is required, and I think the Act is actually quite clear in regards to what our role is in regards to passing a budget, and we have met the proper exception.
I would like to pass a comment on, at this stage.
Can I have a follow-up for a moment, please?
Pardon me?
I had the floor prior to...
I'll let you have a follow-up.
Thank you. A board is legally required to ensure effective stewardship of the board's resources and to file a balanced budget.
Okay. Now can I pass my comment? Okay. First of all, keep in mind that the ministry hasn't come out exactly with how much money they're going to give us. So, the budget that we're talking about does not reflect whatever source of money is going to get confirmed. So, within those parameters, there's pretty good chances that the balance, the budget itself, and correct me as I'm going along here as to whether I'm interpreting this properly, but there's good likeliness that once the funding is being confirmed, that funding will bring the perceived deficit in balance, number one. Right now, we are taking advantage of the regulation of the 1%, and we are clearly within the limitations of that. I would also remark to you that in spite of the fact that we are a growth board, in spite of the fact that we are the least funded board, and in spite of the fact of the effective operations that we are used to carrying out, the amount of deficit that is being, if you want to call it that is being covered within the 1% is a minimal amount. And I would submit to you that because we've already advised the ministry, we have emailed to that effect, we've had discussions with them, I think we're quite within complying guidelines and regulations to approve this budget tonight.
Through you, Mr. Chair, another observation. Within the funding provided by the ministry, it is the responsibility of trustees to establish a balanced budget that reflects the board's vision, the needs of the community, and onwards. The point is, again, it goes back to the beginning. We only have the mandate, legal mandate, to approve balanced budgets.
I would submit to you, Mr. Antomasi, that we are in fact doing that within the 1% limitation. Now,
can you quote the legislation? Quote the legislation.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. To speak to Trustee Antomasi, two things. One is I am looking at the legislation, and subsection 4 is an exception to 232, which talks about passing and being fiscally responsible and passing a balanced budget. And again, any statute, you have to take the whole, you can't cherry pick. And you're cherry picking right now what you want to look at. Secondly, what I would say to you is then what suggestions do you suggest that we cut any more from this budget that already has been cut?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in response to Trustee Guzzo, we haven't had any input in the budget. We've not looked at programs. We've played absolutely no role in this thing. The budget has been presented to us. It was submitted to us. We don't know any of the categories and how the expenditures and where the expenditure goes. We have a summary budget. We didn't do a line-by-line review of the budget. Hence, we do not know where the money goes or is going.
Trustee Duarte, please.
Mr. Chair, I'm a relatively newer trustee, and so I have a question to Superintendent Lofts. He's a new superintendent too. How many times in the past, in recent memories, have we ever submitted a perfectly balanced budget?
A perfectly balanced budget? Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. A perfectly 0-0 balanced budget, I do not recall when we've had a perfectly balanced budget. There's always been some either positive, typically positive, not.
Yeah, I want to bring one clarity to the discussion here. If I may, excuse me, guys, one conversation at a time, please. I'd like to bring one clarity to the thing. A balanced budget within the definition of what's allowed within the ministry is within the use of the 1%. We are well within that limitation, and I would suggest to you that we are still within that limitation and still awaiting funding from the government, which, in all likeliness, will eliminate the deficit. So, if you want to call it that. But we're dealing with a balanced budget with the use of the 1%.
Through you, Mr. Chair, point of order.
Do I have the floor?
Has had his hand up for a little while.
I know my shoulder's cramping. It's clear we're not going to change people's point of view. We received the information. We've looked at this information several times. It's very well laid out. I suggest we vote and move this meeting forward.
Are we ready to vote? Because I certainly wouldn't want to rush a decision here. Garbella, go ahead.
Thank you. I wouldn't want to rush it either, so, I guess I'm gonna ask, in December, when we got the revised budget and we were at a surplus, quite a big surplus. So, was there any foresight that this might have happened, that we would be in a deficit, and was some put aside? Because it's not really, so, just wondering, comment on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have money set aside, and that's why we're dipping into that money that's been set aside. The deficit, that's what we're trying to do right now as a result of this budget, is use some of the surplus that we've had in the past. This year is only for this year's revenue coming in, expenses going out.
Superintendent Loft, would you, do you have handy what the amount of that deficit before dipping into, how much are we covering through the 1%? What are we really talking?
From an operating perspective, it's $278,000.
I think that makes the point. We're $278,000 in a over $400 million budget. So,
which represents 0.000637 of the budget.
So there's, let's keep things into perspective here. I think I will take this to a vote if we're ready to vote.
So, this is a
Point of
new
order.
situation that the board finds itself in, and if that's the case, then we need a three-quarter majority, which is in our governance policy.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Trustee Intomasi, can you please give us specifically what you're quoting in regards to it? You've made mention of the governance policy. Are you referring to our bylaws? Are you referring to Robert's Rules of Orders? And how does it pull into effect with the 1% deficit?
It doesn't. All it speaks to is that, if it's a new item that hasn't been dealt with before, it requires a three-quarters majority.
How is it?
Which means that we're going against what took place all the previous years.
How is it a new item, Trustee Antomasi?
We've never faced a deficit before. Have we?
Is it a deficit or not?
It is a deficit as far as
Through you,
I'm
Mr. Chair, because we seem
As
to
far
be
as
able
you're
to just
concerned,
talk
yes.
freely. Through you, Mr. Chair, maybe if we can all respect the process and speak when we're acknowledged. Again, I think if we're referring to, it's not a new process, it's very clear in the Education Act, we're falling under the exception, we're still within the Education Act.
All right. I think we're ready to vote. Trustee Murphy, sorry.
In favor?
Mr. Chair, can you read again?
I'm sorry?
Can you read the motion again?
Would you read it, please?
Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the 2019-20 budget estimate in the amount of $428,758,303.
Okay. Trustee Murphy.
In favor?
Trustee Carabella.
Opposed.
Trustee Antomasi.
Opposed?
Trustee Mazza.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien.
I declare a conflict of interest on this matter.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
I declare a conflict of interest on this
Oh,
matter.
yes, right. Okay. Trustee Herrero.
In favor.
Trustee Duarte.
In favor.
Trustee Zarnota. Trustee Charlebois.
In favor.
And Trustee Guzzo.
In favor.
Motion carries. Item 8.1, 2019-20 Internal Audit Plan. Superintendent Loft. Yep, please.
Be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Audit Committee to approve the internal audit plan for 2019-20.
Please.
Trustee Zarnota, seconded by Trustee Murphy. Discussion? Okay, registered vote. Trustee Murphy.
In favor?
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Trustee Yantomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Mazza.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien.
In favor.
Trustee Herrero.
In favor.
Trustee Duarte.
In favor.
Trustee Zarnota. Trustee Charlebois.
In favor.
Trustee Guzzo.
In favor.
Motion carries. Point 11, 2018-2019 year-end audit planning report from KPMG. Superintendent Loft.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the external auditor's 2018-19 year-end audit planning report.
May I have a motion to Trustee Guzzo, seconded Trustee Murphy. Discussion? Move to a vote. Trustee Murphy.
In favor?
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Trustee Yantomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Mazza.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien.
In favor.
Trustee Herrero.
In favor.
Trustee Duarte.
In favor.
Trustee Zarnota. Trustee Charlebois.
In favor.
And Trustee Guzzo.
In favor.
Motion carries. Item 9, staff reports. There are no staff reports to be received.
There was one more.
There's
Point of
another
order.
action item.
Ah, yes, of course. So now we'll move to the action item that was moved by Trustee O'Brien. Trustee O'Brien, would you reread the motion?
I will, and I'm reading this on behalf of our student trustee Stephanie Mazza. Whereas cutting down trees for paper is a detrimental action towards the environment since it has reached a critical state due to the amount of carbon emissions in the atmosphere. Whereas the Halton Catholic District School Board recognizes the increasing presence of technology in the workplace and wants to ensure our students and staff are equipped to achieve throughout their entire life. Whereas our Catholic faith calls us to be stewards of the earth and do everything we can to protect our common home. Whereas going paperless would create a more accessible environment for students in the Halton Catholic District School Board. And whereas the Halton Catholic District School Board recognizes the importance of strategic planning for the future, therefore be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board devise a strategy to greatly reduce the paper usage in our schools, administrative buildings, and learning centers by 2024. That's the motion. Seconder.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank the trustees for their support in bringing this motion forward and giving me the opportunity to speak on it. So I think this motion is really imperative to our future as a board. It helps the environment. In accordance with policy V-15, it states that the board's responsibility in connection with the policy development and implementation process
is to encourage all board personnel to adopt and promote environmentally appropriate practices. In this critical state of the environment that we're witnessing right now, I think it's really important that boards take a second and review all their policies on environmental stewardship and what we're doing going forward to support this. So I think that my motion is not to go paperless. It is to look into devising a strategy to go paperless. It's to encourage all board staff to see what the costs are, how they would go about going paperless in the future, to maybe implement a policy from the information that's gathered from this motion going forward. I also think that going paperless is important because of the technological advancement. The world is working towards being paperless. This policy would ensure that the Halton Catholic District School Board is ahead in that way. It's also in accordance with our strategic planning and always being ready for the future and being one step ahead. I'm not looking to do this in the near future. I just want to start the discussion about a potential policy and to gain information about what we are already doing for it. So, if you have any questions, I'm open.
Thank you, Trustee Mazza. Trustee Murphy.
I could be wrong. There was a lot of whereases, so I may have lost something in the discussion. Does it ask for a report? Does it ask for strategy and staff input? I didn't catch that part of it.
Yes, it does. In the resolve statement, it says that the Halton Catholic District School Board, like staff, devise a report about it. Yeah.
Trustee Duarte.
Hey, Mr. Chair. I'm paperless right now, okay, and many of my kids in school, they are pretty much paperless. I'm sure the board is doing a great job with this. We have a green team and we have it being done. I just want to ask a question to you, Mr. Chair, to any of the superintendents or Director Daly. How paperless are we right now? What's the benchmark? Where are we?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think I could say how paperless we are. I'm not sure if anybody else around the table could. We did, I believe last year, the year before, try to cut print costs, but that really didn't necessarily speak to going paperless in schools. I think there are a lot of implications to going paperless. So I think that's something that trustees would need to consider. And I see Superintendent Kroll over there with his hand up.
There's a lot of work being done in terms of using virtual learning environments, which would be moving from sort of the paper and pencil tasks that are being done in our schools. So a lot of training is ongoing with our staff, with our administrators. Also, a lot of our departments are looking at how we can take traditional paper forms and use electronic methods of capturing those forms rather than the traditional, for safety, for security, but also to reduce paper use.
Any other comments? Trustee Carabello.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So Stephanie, why did you choose 2024 as a year? Just 5 years? 5-year plan?
I thought that it wouldn't be feasible to implement it in the next 2 to 3 years, so I thought 5 years is a good goal for that. 4 years.
Good. And a follow-up, this report that you talked about, did you put a date on that in the motion? Like when should the staff bring a report?
No, but I'm open to amendments about that. If you want to include one, that'd probably.
Okay. Anybody wants to offer?
Anyone else? Okay.
If I might, as trustees are aware, they did approve a new project which is going through the director's office to look at purchasing scanning technology and moving a number of departments towards a more paperless product, to which HR is one of the first areas. So we're going through that now. It is a long-term approach in terms of being able to prepare existing paper files for scanning and to have the person power to be able to do that and then eventually move towards paperless technology. So we are doing that now. We're estimating that that's probably going to take 5 years before the HR department will be totally paperless. We are also looking at the director's area and looking at all of the past files and documents, and that area is going to take some time to do as well. And again, it's the person power behind it. So what I would say is that realistically, you are looking at 5 to 6 years before you'll see some significant changes in the amount of paper that we produce. Thank you.
Trustee Watson. Go ahead.
See, Mr. Chair, question to to Trustee Mazza through to Trustee O'Brien. Would you consider putting a date on your motion? I think it's better to have a date wherein we can get a report and then do something about it. I think this is a great motion, and you're going to leave a great legacy for all the students to come in. So if you could put a date in, you would consider that, it would be great.
Yes, I'll consider putting a date in. What date were you thinking of?
Do we not?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we'd need one of our adult trustees to move an amendment to the
Yes, yeah. So we're talking about an amendment to the motion.
Okay. I amend. I can make an amendment that we put a date of January 1st, 2024. No, wait a minute, you want a date for the staff report?
Staff report, yeah.
All right. I'd like to amend that, staff report, be presented to the trustees, in 1 year from today.
So the amendment is that the staff report come back to the board
1 year from the final.
1 year from today.
From the final board meeting in 2020. That's my.
Okay, does everybody understand the amendment? Can I have a seconder? Trustee Guzzo, are you seconding or are you asking a question?
Actually, I have a further proposal to Trustee Mazza, and it could potentially lead to a further amendment.
Can we join the two amendments? Turn it into one amendment?
But she needs to be okay with this, so, my proposal would be, what if we put this into the next strategic plan, and built it in that way so that it fell in line? Would that be something, would that be acceptable?
When is the next strategic plan? Do you know?
Through you,
No.
Mr. Chair, we'll start planning for the next strategic plan at the spring of next year.
Yeah. Can we deal with the time period, and then it automatically would by default become part of the strategic plan?
Can I speak to this? So, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The strategic plan would be the implementation part of this. All we're asking for is a report, so staff can look at it. So I think we can move it forward. I think staff could do this by December of this year. So that would be the amended date, unless Director Daly, that would be too soon. But I think it can be done. I don't think it would impose too much on our staff.
Do we have,
I did make an amendment.
Can one of the superintendents weigh in on what a reasonable date could be?
I put it through our director. That's the reason.
Okay, well, may I suggest that? So what's the date that we're working with? December, 12 months? What is the date?
December coming up, 2019.
I would, is it superintendent, who's the superintendent responsible for this?
I'll take it on.
Superintendent Kroll, do you have a thought to contribute in this?
I'm going to decline to comment at this time.
I suggest, through you, Mr. Chair?
December's fine?
May I suggest that the director decide?
He just suggested to me that December is fine. All right, so the end of December. So we are amending your motion to set a deadline for the report
For December
for December
2019.
31st, 2019.
19. So I need a second.
Okay, so that's the motion. You seconded. You should wait for me to ask. Yeah. All right, so, discussion. Trustee Carabello.
Just a small comment that already, I've noticed just in my few years here that I used to ask for a paper of today's agenda, and that stopped. So I've gone paperless that way.
Okay, so let's move to a vote. Trustee Murphy, December 31st, 2019.
Motion as amended is what we're voting on?
No, the amendment we're working on.
Voting on the amendment, I'm in favor.
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Trustee Antomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Massa.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien.
In favor.
Trustee Herrero.
In favor.
Trustee Duarte.
In favor.
Trustee Zarnota. Trustee Agnew.
In favor.
Trustee Charlebois.
In favor.
Trustee Guzzo.
In favor.
Motion carries. The amendment to the motion carries. Now we're going to move to the main motion
As amended.
as amended. Any discussion? And
Please, no discussion.
no, there is no discussion. All right, what is the motion? Somebody want to read the motion? Go ahead.
Similar to sort of what Trustee Guzzo had mentioned, I'll suggest an amendment that it be included in the strategic plan as well. So we'll get the staff report in December, and then in the strategic plan be included.
Point of order, Trustee Antomasi, you don't have the floor.
So the suggestion is to deal with another amendment that says we include it in the strategic plan. Is that correct, Trustee Charlebois?
Okay.
May I have a seconder for that?
I will move that motion.
You move that
Through you,
motion?
Mr. Chair.
May I have a seconder? Trustee Agnew. Discussion. Trustee Mazza.
So would this be in addition to the staff report, it would be also in the strategic plan? So it's both? So just an added element to it? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Trustee O'Brien.
A comment. It seems that staff is doing this already. However, to have it concretized into a motion that's voted upon as an action and put into strategic plan, I feel would give our whole philosophy of a student voice actually in the strategic plan before we even create it, and I think that's a good move.
Okay, so we can take this to a vote. Secretary Daley.
I just want to remind trustees that we do have a policy around the strategic plan process. While I think this probably will end up there, if people think it's important, I'd be reluctant to start planning the strat plan kind of piecemeal right now. But I think, obviously, there seems to be consensus around the room that this is an important issue, and I think we won't forget about it when we get there, but that's just a comment.
All right, let's take it to a vote.
Through you, Mr.
Trustee.
Chair, I do have a further comment on this particular matter.
Go ahead.
So if we end up with a policy, then the strategic plan would feed off the policy. So it would happen anyways.
Thank you for your observation, Trustee Antomasi. So can we proceed to vote? Trustee Murphy.
Opposed.
Trustee Carabella.
Opposed.
Trustee Antomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Mazza.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien.
In favor.
Trustee Herrero.
In favor.
Trustee Duarte.
In favor.
Trustee Zarnota. Trustee Agnew.
In favor.
Trustee Charlebois.
In favor.
Trustee Guzzo.
In favor.
Motion carries. So we need to go back to the original motion. Would you like it reread? Go ahead.
Whereas cutting down trees for paper is a detrimental act.
Excuse me, Trustee O'Brien. It's the original motion as amended,
Okay,
okay?
all right, so
So we're,
all right.
sure, go ahead.
All right.
Go.
Whereas cutting down trees for paper is I have to put my glasses on, sorry. Cutting down trees for paper is a determined action towards the environment since it has reached a critical state due to the amount of carbon emissions in the atmosphere. Whereas the Halton Catholic District School Board recognizes the increasing presence of technology in the workplace and wants to ensure our students and staff are equipped to achieve throughout their entire life. Our Catholic faith calls us stewards of the earth and do everything we can to protect our common home. Going paperless would create a more accessible environment for students in the HCDSB. The HCDSB recognizes the importance of strategic planning in the future. Therefore, be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board devise a strategy to greatly reduce the paper usage in our schools, administrative buildings, and learning centers by 2024. Be it further resolved that a staff report come to the Board of Trustees, the last board meeting of December 2019. Be it further resolved that this initiative be added to the strategic plan. Does that work?
Thank you. Discussion?
Through you, Mr.
Trustee
Chair.
Antomensi.
So if we, 2024, if we use the year 2024, since our strategic plan starts in 2 years, which will be 2021, that would push it back 5 years, because our strategic plan starts in 2021. That is our director's submission of the strategic plan.
Trustee Guzzo.
Through you, Mr. Chair, however, in the strategic plan, we could set the goal that it'll be accomplished by 2024. So regardless if the plan starts in 2021 and ends in 2026, the goal date for it to be fully implemented could be 2024. That was a question to you, Director. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Does that answer my question? I'm just trying to put it into the strategic plan. So if the strategic plan starts in 2021, then we just change her date, 2024, to read 2025.
Sorry, through you,
With
Mr.
any luck,
Chair.
it'll all be done and won't have to be. So,
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just want to respond to that. It's actually, if it's a 5-year plan, it'll go to 2026, and we can still achieve it. The idea is that it's achieved by 2024, or sooner. But the point is it'll start to be phased in the strategic plan in 2021.
all right. I think we've agreed with the principle and the mechanics of when this is gonna start. So, I'm gonna take it to a vote. Trustee Murphy.
In favor.
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Trustee Antomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Mazza.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien.
In favor.
Trustee Herrero.
In favor.
Trustee Duarte.
In favor.
Trustee Zarnota. Trustee Agnew.
In favor.
Trustee Charlebois.
In favor.
Trustee Guzzo.
In favor.
Motion carries. Next item on the report is staff reports. There are no staff reports. And we are moving on to information items. Before we move on to the student trustee update, I would like to take this opportunity to say a few words to our student trustees. William Charlebois, Denzel Herrero, and Stephanie Meza. I wish to recommend each of you, or I should say, I wish to commend each of you for the exceptional work that you do representing the interests of students at the Halton Catholic District School Board for 2018 and 2019. Through your active involvement in your community, in your parishes, and at school, you have demonstrated strong leadership skills, a remarkable sense of social responsibility, which will serve you well in years to come. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, I would like to thank you for your commitment and for the steadfast contributions you have made in trustee deliberations at our school board meetings. Your input during difficult discussions at the board table have proven to be invaluable to our school district. I wish you all the best as you continue to use your talents and abilities to contribute to the common good, and God bless. And I will, at this point, offer Secretary Daly to say a few words of appreciation.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. One of the ways that senior staff and myself in particular are able to still have a school experience is really through our student trustees. So I've learned a lot about what's going on at schools, kind of behind the scenes and in front of the scenes from our three trustees this year. All three of you are exceptional role models for our student leaders. And for all of our students, I wish you the best in the future. I thank you for your service both to your local school, to your community, and to the board as a whole. I think you're going to go on to do great things, and I really it was a pleasure this year getting to know you, so thank you very much.
So with that, hear, hear. So, Trustee Herrero, please report.
I'll just keep it short and brief, and through you, Mr. Chair. So, students attended the HCCEF golf tournament to represent students at that event. The new 2018-2019 student trustees, Dilek Suwan, Malika Bambra, and Davin Karatao, have selected their new student senate, along with their 9 or 8 senators from each high school here in the school board, and they will begin their term as of September 2nd, 2019. And just, I would say on behalf of the three of us and on behalf of Milton and Halton Hills, that the students really do thank you for the work that you have done here over the 6 months of starting your term as trustees officially since the inauguration. And obviously, as student trustees, the pressure is on us to sit at the board table, really voice their concerns, and it was an absolute honor and pleasure to sit beside all 9 of you and Director Daly, Superintendent Lofts, and all of our superintendents here at this board table this school year. And I would just like to say that as you continue on in the future, as we all part our ways, that the students are always listening and watching and always thanking you for the service that you do to help keep our faith in action at the school board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item is 10.2, school education field trips.
Chair.
Would you like to say something? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. I just want to say thank you to all of the board members for working so well with us, for helping us so much. If we had any questions, we could always go to you, and that's really important as a student trustee. We're obviously still learning during our year, so just thank you for your support, and also thank you to Rosie, who's a really big support for us. So yeah, thank you.
Trustee Shelby.
I have to add something as well. So it's definitely been an interesting interesting year. We the new board coming in, the new director of education, and then new superintendent of business services. We've had it's been great to get to know all you guys. I know every single one of my friends. Whenever I walk up and I see Director Daly at an event, and I'm just like, hey, how's it going? And I was like, why do you know these people? So it's kind of funny to see that, the only chance that students will get to actually have a first name basis with some of these people is it's kind of fun. But no, over the last year I've learned more than I could even describe, and there's still more that I could learn, but it's been definitely one of the best experiences of my life and the most shaping. It's always great to see the different points of view and get to know all of you as people, and really see how our board is moving forward. And I definitely think we'll have some challenges in the future, but I think that we are in good hands with our superintendents and the director and trustees.
Thank you.
You are all eligible to run as adults.
Okay. We're ready to go to item 10.2, school educational field trips. Superintendent Nar.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, the list of trips coming up for the fall are in front of you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions? Thank you. Item 10.3, Milton number 3 Catholic Secondary School update. Aaron Loft.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. In front of you, you'll have the information report regarding the update on the secondary school from Milton number 3. Fred or myself will be able, Mr. Thibault or myself will be able to take any questions pertaining to it.
Thank you very much. Item 10.4, construction report, Assumption Catholic Secondary School. Mr. Merrick, or Superintendent Merrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, presenting the construction report for the Assumption Secondary School addition and renovation project. We're finalizing the renovation work in the existing building. So we have the new student forum, you can see in the photos there. The renovated washrooms are just finalizing now. A lot of painting and new lockers going in as well. Next month, we shift the focus to the addition and heat pump installations throughout the building, and a new electrical services going in for the school as well. So we expect to be back in the building by September, and we'll open up portions of the addition as they are completed. If you have to take any questions that the trustees may have.
Trustee Carabella.
This September?
Yes, this September. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, presenting the construction report for the Bishop Redding addition project. As you can see, we're just beginning the works at Bishop Redding School in Milton. We have our new sign up showing the rendering of the front of the school, and we're starting the site servicing work. Over the summer, we hope to complete all the site services, and it includes relocating many of the numerous portables that are on the site to accommodate the construction, as well as redoing all of a vast majority of the asphalt and concrete work to relay out the parking and the walkways on the site. It is a substantial amount of work to be done over the summer, but we're getting a head start, getting in there even before exams are done, to start prepping so we can get all that work completed this summer. So happy to take any questions that trustees may have on the Bishop Redding early stages of the addition project.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, simple question. What's a realistic date for completion? Is it September or December of this year?
For completion of the building? For the building, we're hoping to, so there's 4 phases of this project. The first phase being the cafeteria. We hope to open that sometime mid-year next school year. So we'll try and target semester 2 start, but even that is ambitious as well. The second phase would be the child care center, and the third phase being the classroom portion. Those we hope to open for September, both of those 2 phases for September 2020. And then once the child care center is opened, we can then proceed with demolishing the existing child care on site and constructing the new fitness room and 4th gymnasium for the school. So that won't start until September 2020, and hope to open it up by September 2021. So, but the largest portion is the classroom edition, which is it's a 30 classroom edition, and that's what we're targeting September 2020.
The next item is a budget report. Construction report on St. Nicholas Catholic Elementary School.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, presenting the construction report for St. Nicholas School for May. The work is progressing there as well. We have mechanical installs happening. Actually, today they all showed up, so we're craning those in today at the site. We have second floor load-bearing walls going up right now. For next month, we're continuing the site services. We have our first manholes installed late last week, and we have a few more going in this week. Structural steel is going to arrive at the second floor, and then mechanical equipment, as I said, is being dropped in today, actually. So we're progressing along with that. Again, still targeting a January 2020 opening for that, so after Christmas next year. Happy to take any questions that trustees may have.
Questions? Thank you. The next item is 10.7, Budget Report for September the 1st, 2018 to May 31st, 2019. Superintendent Loss.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, in front of you, you'll see the budget report for September 2018, start of this year, to the end of May 31st, 2019. We are on target to have a balanced budget by the, not balanced budget, sorry. We are on target to have, we are on target based on our forecast at this point in time for the August 31st. I'll be happy to take any questions. Jay Chanthavong or myself will be happy to take any questions.
Okay. No questions. Thank you very much, Superintendent Loft. The next item.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, in front you will see the long-term capital plan.
No, that's okay.
The long-term capital plan update that Fred or myself would be able to take any questions on. I actually think I jumped I missed out on the capital.
We were at 10.8. Capital project
It's the capital
report.
projects plan, and I was reading from the long-term capital plan, so I apologize.
Okay, so
you'll also have the capital plan update report in front of you as well for any questions Jay or myself would be happy to take.
any questions? No questions. Now we can go to the long-term one.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. In front of you, you'll see the long-term capital plan update that has been prepared by our Planning Services Department, and Mr. Fred Thibault or myself can take any questions you have relating to it. Thank you.
No questions? Moving right along. Item 10.10, Halton Student Transportation Services, HSTS update, bell time efficiency. We didn't have an opportunity to have a discussion at the last board meeting, so I added this on to the agenda. Do any trustees have further questions regarding this? Trustee Duarte.
Hey, Mr. Chair, last time we were having a great discussion, which abruptly ended. So I just want to make a comment here that the communication, I said last time the communication was poor. Adequate information was not given to the parents. That's the reason why I received about 8 to 10 emails besides lots of comments on Facebook. However, the next day of our board meeting, and a detailed email went out to all the parents in the community and all the complaints that I was getting stopped. So that is great. As I said, we must improve our communications, and I'll leave it at that.
Trustee O'Brien.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the bell times for Ascension. I see right now they have a start time of 9:15 and an end time of 3:45. So looking at this, they've had these for quite a while, for several years, right? Am I correct? And so I'm looking at the scenario for a couple that commutes to Toronto. 9:15 is kind of a late start time to begin with. I mean, you need to get daycare before school. And now we're asking them to have a even later start time and an even later finish time. So it's going to 9:25 and 5 to 4, which makes it even harder for the children to get into after school's program. I'm just wondering, this community has taken the brunt of late times for a while, and now they're being asked to do it even more so. Is there any way to maybe relook at this schedule, make it more equitable? Just putting that out.
Through you, Mr. Chair, with regards to that, I think it's a little bit late in the year for any kind of change that could occur. We do tend to avoid making changes over to a school repeatedly over a long term. So this is maybe one of the schools that we haven't seen any changes in a very long period of time. Whereas, you know, if we're looking at equity, you know, a lot of schools have been seeing time changes over the many years that we've been doing this. So again, this is an annual process that we look at, and we're always trying to find those efficiencies that have the least amount of impact overall in the board system. We were in a situation this year where, as we discussed at the previous board meeting, where really we were at the limit of the efficiency we had while still having a quite substantial deficit to try to catch up on because of the lack of funding for transportation. So again, we had consideration for all the changes that we were making. We do understand their impacts, but this is one that we think that was necessary overall to undertake in order to reach the savings that we found, again, so that everyone can benefit from it. So I would say that at this point in time, this is the best cut that we have. Again, this is the bell time as well, so there is a little bit more leeway for students arriving earlier. For kids that are on the bus, again, the pickup time is a little bit earlier than this as well. And for parents dropping their kids off, we do acknowledge that this is a little bit different in terms of commuting time, but they're not the only school that have a later time such as this. There are other schools that are around the top half of the 9 o'clock spectrum as well as schools that are much earlier. So we're trying to balance it out overall while trying to keep it as equitable as possible as well.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just a question, understanding that, as you said, it's a little late now, right, with that, but when do those conversations start? So I know when the decision was made, it's in, the information is there, but when do these conversations begin as far as assessing these efficiencies and looking at bell times? I mean, does it take months and months and months? Like, what's an idea of that time frame?
Through Mr. Chair, it's usually a little bit on the later half of the year, so we have to start having, the whole registration process needs to essentially be completed so that HSTS, when they're doing their route planning, they have to have all that new student information in place so they can start rerouting and figuring out exactly where these routes are going to be, because, you know, again, we can plan where they are in general, but if we're adding kids in another area, then the route has to change. So usually we wait around the end of March, April timeline to reopen it and then start doing the route planning for the entirety of the board. And then with that, we're also doubling on to trying to find some efficiencies as we're rerouting. So this is an exercise, whether or not we're looking at bell time efficiencies or adjusting bell times, the HSTS is required to pretty much start a little bit later in the year once we get that pre-registration information. So the new JKs, other students that are entering throughout the different grades. So we're a little bit limited as to how early we can begin this process.
Trustee O'Brien?
Piggybacking on what Trustee Agnew said, as well, I heard it from the community kind of before I heard it from the board, and I know it's late this year. I'm wondering about next year. Could Ascension, I mean, they have had always late times. That was the word I heard in the community. Now it's even later. Would you consider them for the next year having an earlier time?
Through Mr. Chair, if we're looking at something like that, so a little bit on the process. When we're doing these time shifts, as we mentioned, we're trying to keep it within that 10 to 15 minute timeline or spectrum, so as to not create a significant impact or complete upheaval of what's happening. So to your point, if we're going to make Ascension an earlier time and we're significantly shifting it, then the opposite needs to be true for another school. We're going to have to do a significant change to essentially swap them out, which, you know, it's a lot more impactful than slow little 10-minute increments, 5-minute increments. So, you know, it's tit for tat almost, where if you do it to one, then you have to inevitably do it for another, and then it's just kind of a, you know.
I'm just looking, sorry, Mr. I'm just looking at something that's fair. I mean, personally, if I was a parent, I'm just thinking it would be easier to have an earlier start time than a late one.
Again, there are all options, and I would say the vast majority, if not all of our schools, for before and after care. So that is an option that is there. And again, in such a circumstance, you know, we assume that there's probably a lot of parents that are using before and after care already, and those that aren't may need to start using it. But the same can be true for you know, other parents, that if you were to switch it on the other side too, then, you know, they may be being impacted as well. So, you know, again, we're doing this on an annual basis to ensure that we're maintaining and being as efficient as we possibly can. And again, you know, next year it can be something that we look at again through our review, and it could be something that is explored. But again, we're trying to minimize the overall impacts to the entirety of the system.
Trustee Carabella?
I just had a question to confirm that children are supervised like 15 minutes prior to the start time, so they can get dropped off. Thank you.
Through Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. One more question.
Yeah. Question, in your summary here, item number 4, item number 5 actually, you said that the split of 40-58 ratio is used. I think our school board is 1/3 approximately the size of the public board, so how come we have these numbers? How do we determine these numbers?
Well, it's fair. It's in terms of usage. So acknowledging, yes, you are correct that our board is about 1/3 of the size, but the size of our student population doesn't necessarily reflect the transported versus non-transported cohorts. So again, like, if you were to use a very simple example, the public board has more schools, therefore better coverage, therefore less kids being transported, whereas we have larger catchment areas, and therefore we may require a little bit more transportations per capita than another board. And that's one of the main reasons.
Through you, Mr. Chair, can I have a question here?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Thank you. So, I hear a lot of we's. So, can you please describe for me the process? So, once we achieve registration, we know how many students we have. What happens after that? We go to the bus company. Is it the bus company that decides what best suits them? Or are we a function of that? Or do we actually have a say in what times we get for our schools?
Through Mr. Chair, the bus, just to want to make a differentiation here, the Halton Student Transportation Services is an arm's length agency of both boards, so they are a consortia that represents us. The bus operators are managed by the HSTS. They follow what HSTS puts into place. With regards to HSTS, again, they're looking to the best interest of the boards. Their interest is paramount, is always based on what's best for both boards. And when we're looking at bell times efficiency reviews, or when HSTS is looking at them, when they receive all the new student information, new addresses, and redrawing all the routes, they're looking at it always like it is their mandate to maximize the overall efficiencies of the board. Because as you'll see in here, even if at our maximum efficiency, we're still running at a deficit. Even at our maximum efficiency and the top-up funding from the Ministry of Education, we're still running at a deficit, and we're one of the model boards of the province. So again, their mandate is to us, and to maintain that while again trying to reduce overall impacts. The bus companies that operationalize that after we provide them the routing information and the routes that they need to complete.
Follow-up. So would boundary reviews, would that help the situation or not?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it really depends on the situation. I would say that for us, you're probably limited in trying to do that. And again, I wouldn't use that as a way of reducing overall transportation costs, unless there is an area that clearly could be walkable and could be, arrived at through, other means than transportation. But I would say that for the vast majority of it, it's, you're transporting kids that would otherwise be transported otherwise. So it's a net zero. So I wouldn't say that boundary reviews would be effective in that.
One more question.
Following up with what Trustee Antomasi is saying, my question is sort of similar. Do we get the final say to that schedule?
Through Mr. Chair, the Board of Directors of the Halton Student Transportation Services Consortia, which is comprised of both chairs of the board, both directors, and both superintendent of businesses, are the ones that make the ultimate decision. So it's a 6-member Board of Directors that makes the final say on this through a lot of discussion with the staff at HSTS, and a lot of the things we're discussing tonight are considerations that we're having around that table prior to the final decision being made.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is miscellaneous information, and it's just to state that included as part of your package is the minutes of the November 15 Audit Committee meeting, the minutes of the April 8th CPIC meeting, the minutes of the May 14th Policy Committee are all provided as part of your information. Correspondence, we have a letter from Mr. and Mrs. Nozella and ABC Ontario are included in your package for your information. We have an open question period. No? Okay. We have to move back in camera, so I need the motion to move back in camera. Trustee Duarte, seconded by, Trustee Zarnota. May I have a vote? Motion carries. There are no absentees. And, adjournment and closing prayer.